from that era, right? That's my 20s, man. We were in rock and yeah, we did all those. Oh yeah, saw Patrick.
All right. You guys ready?
Okay.
I'm going to try and let's see. Let's see. That would be. All right. You guys ready?
Yep.
Want to do this?
Yep.
There's no audition for true love. No matter what, you don't have to earn it. If you've ever felt like an outcast, there's good news if you never heard it. God so loved the world. God so loved the world. He never left you out of it. Whosoever needs a shelter, needs a savior, coming closer. All who wander, every outsider, you are safe here. Whosoever. Oh, no more of life on the sidelines. There's an open door and you are invited. Come on in, enjoy the song, and raise a glass as you belong. No matter what, you're welcome and wanted. God so loved the world. God so loved the world. He never left you out of it. Whosoever needs a shelter, needs a savior, coming closer. All who wander, every outsider, you are safe here. Whosoever. Oh, oh, oh. When love looks like this, like a long walk home, like a father who runs out to find you. When love looks like this, like a man on a cross, his arms stretching out to remind you. Whosoever needs a shelter, needs a savior, coming close. Come on, all who wander, every outsider, you are safe here. Whosoever needs a shelter, needs a savior, coming closer. All who wander, every outsider, you are safe here. Whosoever. Let me just tell you, if that doesn't get you motivated, I want you to pay attention to those words. There's no audition for true love, no matter what. You don't have to earn it. If you've ever felt like an outcast, there's good news. If you've never heard it, God what? So loved the world. He never left you out of it. We're glad you're here today. Go ahead.
Welcome, everybody, and good morning. Congratulations, you made it. You got yourself up, you got yourself together, you got here. Some of you solved some work problems on the phone in the parking lot already. And just take a deep breath and absorb it all. So we welcome those of you that are here and those of you that are online, and a special welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. Even if one of you is the escaped prisoner from the Jefferson County lockup from last night. So on the back of every seat, there's a QR code that you can scan to download our church app, and everything is there. Everything that you need to stay connected, to get connected to faith. So we encourage you to download it, whether it's your first time here or whether you've been here a long time. And so today, as always, we'll be having communion. And we believe that the Lord's table is open to all, no matter where you find yourself this morning. So if you're online, we invite you to get some bread and wine or grape juice and have that ready so you can join us for communion later on. On the screens, there's a QR code that you can scan for today's bulletin. It has the scripture that we're using for today, and then also resources for the week and some of the announcements that we won't be talking about specifically later on. And if you already have the app, the worship info is under worship notes, and then the announcements are under the e-news tab. Kids in worship. We love having kids in worship, but we know sometimes it's hard to sit still for the whole time. That goes for all ages. And so we want to make sure that you know about some of the resources that are available to you. For age up to 3, we have a nursery, so that's straight down and to the left. And then for 4 years old through 5th grade, we will be having Sunday school today. And so that is out the doors straight back to the fellowship hall. And those kids will be dropped off right at the beginning of communion here in the sanctuary. And then there are also some resources available for kids over in the back there, whiteboards, coloring sheets, and some play space. So we gather this morning as a community and not as individuals. And so as a community, it's important to get to know each other. So I want to invite you to stand for a few moments and say hello to each other, or maybe walk across the way and say hello to someone that you don't get to see all the time. And if you're online, I encourage you to take out your phone and greet someone that you haven't seen in a while. All right, I invite you back to your seats.
Good luck, Paul.
Yeah. Okay, you can finish saying hi afterwards. I'll invite everyone back to their seats so we can continue. They have the God echo volume here right now, so. Thank you, everyone. So as we prepare ourselves for worship, I invite you to take a deep breath and close your eyes for a moment and allow yourself to be centered here in this space and this time as we come to worship and praise our God. And as we do this, I invite you to join me in these centering words that you'll find on the screen. Grace and peace to you from the God who was and is to come. Grace and peace to you from Jesus Christ, God's Son, our Lord, who came to earth to show us how to live, who died and rose so we can live. To the one who loves us beyond measure and reason, the one who gives us life and calls us to be the hands, feet, and voice of love in this world. May our hearts be lifted to this one. May our voices be filled with praise. For this is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen.
Well, you just sat down. Now we're going to ask you to stand again. That is good. So we make this prayer and we ask God to help us. We ask God to come with us and help us. Because as we're going to hear, we're going to be blown away by Trisha's presentation this morning. And she's going to talk about salt and light. And the truth of the matter is God calls us to something that is not in us without God. And so all of this praying that we do is not always so much about the fact that God will change the world. But so much of the time, it's about that God will change us. Change us. And so that's what this song is about. I stand to praise you, and I fall on my knees. My spirit is willing, but you know where I've been. Light the fire in my heart again. Light the fire in my heart again. I feel your arms around me as the power of your healing. You bring your life right through me like a mighty rushing wind. So light the fire in my soul, and the flame makes me whole. Lord, you know where I've been. So light the fire in my heart again. So light the fire in my heart again. All right, we'll do those two verses again now that you've heard it. Here we go. I stand to praise you, but I fall on my knees. My spirit is willing, but my flesh is so weak. So light the fire in my soul, and the flame makes me whole. Lord, you know where I've been. So light the fire in my heart again. So light the fire in my heart again. I feel your arms around me as the power of your healing begins. You bring your light right through me like a mighty rushing wind. So light the fire in my soul, my weary soul, and praise your spirit. Lord, you know where I've been. So light the fire in my heart again. So light the fire in my heart again.
You may be seated. Our first scripture reading today is from Philippians chapter 4. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. And the second reading is from Matthew chapter 5. You are the salt of the earth, but what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so we are in a sermon series, which I love, which is called, Where Do I Go When I Live? So I'm not focusing on the question and the mystery of where do we go when we die, but even more mysterious some days, where do we go when we live? And today we are talking about not just where we go, but how we go. So I manage a team at work, and guess what? It's performance review season. And during that time, one way we evaluate employees is to look at them on this 2-point scale. Now I know Jim preached a couple of weeks ago and used a scale, so we're nerds, so I'm gonna put a chart up too, right? So if you wanna throw that chart on it. And so we look at not just what they did and what they know, but how they are conducting themselves in the midst of the work in the year. So here's what that chart looks like, and I've plotted out 4 hypothetical employees, of course, right on there. So on the bottom corner, you have, oh, can you go back one slide? It's the first slide. Nope, yep. There we go. Okay, there's the 4 hypothetical employees. So you've got the person in the lower right corner. So they're not really contributing that much in the what in terms of the knowledge and experience and ability. And they're also not being a good team player, and they're not helping out, and they're not, and so we might label someone like that a slacker or a misanthrope, right? And then in the upper top corner, we've got somebody who is known as kind of like the know-it-all. Like they're super smart, they're wicked brilliant, but they don't really participate on the team, and they tell everyone else they're kind of dumb, and they're kind of the jerk, right? And then you've got somebody on the other side who they don't really produce much, but they're the nicest person in the office, right? The nice guy, you know, and you just can't not like this person, but they don't get any work done, right? That's the nice guy. And then you've got somebody in the upper right who kind of has it all. They're a great team player, and they also get a lot done, and this is the servant leader. Okay, thanks for the slide. You can throw that down. So in a study done, guess which type of person people most like on their team? The servant leader, right? Because they've got it all, right? But who's the next person they like? The nice guy, right? Not the person that's getting all the work done, which is very frustrating to that person when you have that archetype. It's very frustrating to the person who's putting out tons of work, but everyone likes the nice guy who's getting nothing done. You know, it's a challenge, right? And I bring up this psychology study a little bit because it shows just how much how we live matters. And that's what we're talking about today. Specifically, how we represent ourselves through that Christ-like character we are charged as Christians to be. And specifically today, we're going to ponder the thought of salt and light. Salt and light are 2 characteristics that are mentioned many, many, many times in the Bible to define this way we should be. So when Jane texted me early this week and told me she was going to be out and asked if I would preach, she said, I know this doesn't give you much time to prepare, but you know, it's your favorite subject, so could you do it? And she's not wrong. It is actually my favorite subject. And for those of you who don't recognize me or are new to this community, my name's Trish Cozart, and I've been a part of this community for about almost 30 years, I think. And it's my honor to be on this preaching team here. And this last year or so, I've not really actually been around these physical halls very much. I've been watching online most Sundays, so even though you haven't seen me, I've actually seen all of you. So why I bring this up is the reason I haven't been here is because I've been out on my mission field. And it's been a rough couple of years in that field. I wasn't in Ethiopia or even downtown Denver working with homeless people or anything like that. Actually, I've just been up the street at work. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but it's true. And it all started with a sermon that I heard on this very stage back in 2008 from Pastor Peter Marine, a sermon about salt and light, consequentially. And one of the verses in that sermon was one that we didn't even read today, but I'll give it to you here. And it has probably become one of my favorite verses of all time and quotable quotes. It's from Colossians, and it was written by Paul, who was traveling around starting the early church after the death of Jesus. And he wrote letters of encouragement to those churches wherever he was. And this letter, called Colossians, was written to the Christians in Colossus, and he was in prison when he wrote it. And this guy named I hope I can say the name right, Epaphras, he was helping plant that Colossian church, and he grew distressed because the church was having trouble and they were in error and there was problems creeping into that church. So he went and visited Paul in prison, of all things. I'm distressed, so I'm going to go visit someone in prison to help me, but that's what he did. This isn't unlike how I felt this week at work, actually. I literally, by Friday, had clocked only about 16 hours of sleep. And by Friday afternoon, I was running on empty. And at that time, I took actually 6 meetings from employees who were in distress on top of my full plate of work. So I feel you, Paul. I know what that felt like. And so what did Paul tell Epaphras? And he said this: devote yourselves to prayer, being watchful and thankful. And pray for us too, that God may open a door for our message so that we may proclaim the majesty of Christ, for which I am in chains. Pray that I proclaim it clearly, as I should. Be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity. And here's my favorite part. Let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Salt and light. That's how we are to go about our missions, whatever that means for you. For me, it means sitting behind a desk right now and pouring my heart and soul into the people around me every day. People who are working for me and with me, people I meet on my job, but people who are also in the midst of doing that job while dealing with their own demons, sickness and injuries, mental health issues, loss of loved ones, painful breakups, stress, anxiety, parenting, abuse, growing old. And all who still have to come to work every day and produce at this demanding standard despite all of that. Salt and light. This is the how we are to be. This is our calling. That's how we are to go live. This notion of salt and light is also really meaningful to me personally. When Jeff and I lost everything in our first startup company and the recession hit on top of that, we were really at rock bottom in 2008. And I needed to go find a new job, and I felt worthless. I felt like I wasn't worth anything anymore, a loser, a failure. That's how it feels when you can't pay your mortgage, when you have 2 grade school kids looking at you to provide dinner every night. And I was sitting right there, or maybe it was, I can't remember where my seat was in church. Maybe it was right over there in church the day that Peter was preaching. And he told me that I was a saint and that I was salt and light. And the next day I actually had an interview at NREL up the street. And I remember walking into it and saying to myself over and over again, I am salt and light, I am salt and light, I am salt and light, I have value. And I gave myself that pep talk. And just because life had been hard on me, it didn't have to dictate who I was. It really never matters what anyone else thinks, right? Not my friends, not my boss, not my family, no one. It only matters what God thinks. If I don't wake up every morning believing that I am salt and light, then I can't do my job here on earth. So that's what I did. I went into the interview with this salt and light confidence in who I was and how I was capable of bringing value. And I let my light shine and my conversation be salty. And I never stopped. For the last 15 years, I've tried my best to keep true to that call, salt and light, every single day. So when Jane sent over the text for today, it was another clear sign that this was the sermon for me. Philippians 4, 8, and 9 that was just read by Paul was one that Jeff and I actually picked out to be read at our wedding. And we had picked it because it had a really strong appeal to us because it spoke to a really guiding principle we both felt strongly about. It depicted that how to live. And I'm going to read it again because I love it so much. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. On the hardest days, I like to reflect on that, and the God of peace will be with you. I never, ever feel alone on my mission when I take time to reflect on that. But I'm rewarded every day, every time I look at the beautiful things around me, sunsets, my puppy, a call from a friend. The moon. Did you see the moon last night? It was amazing. Fresh mowed grass. I love to mow the lawn. It's so satisfying. Text message from my son. A walk with my husband. A good laugh with a coworker. That's peace. That verse is a perfect description of what it means to be light. It's so easy to get swept away into anger and disgust and frustration and sadness when you're not being treated fairly or someone's mean to you or you're disregarded or tragedy strikes. But if you dwell on those things, you'll never be at peace. Peace comes from spending your time dwelling on the lovely and the admirable and the excellent and the praiseworthy, the things that glow in the dark. Okay, so that's light. We covered light. We're going to glow in the dark places, but what about this salt business? What is that all about? The salt is the part that's actually, it's very important in how we live. And we could go around shining bright and being the light and being this positive presence and peace despite the dark around us, but that's only half the equation here, right? Jesus gave a famous sermon. It was called the Sermon on the Mount. And from what we know of that sermon, it was to identify the ways in which the followers of Jesus could behave in living a life of acceptance of God's gracious invitation to enter this kingdom of heaven. And what we mean by the kingdom of heaven, when you hear that in the Bible or read that in the Bible, the kingdom of heaven is actually referring to God's rule here on earth. So that's what we're talking about. Where do we go when we live the earth right now? So here's that excerpt that we just heard from Paul on the Sermon on the Mount from Matthew. It says this, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown and trampled underfoot." And here's the light again. "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light so shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify the Father in heaven." So let's dig in on the salt part, if we will. Let's dig in on the salt. How many of you have watched the Food Network? Okay, you're with me. I use the Food Network to fall asleep at night. Okay, I'm not a good cook. I actually rarely cook at all. I eat cereal and nuts. I mean, I might as well be a squirrel, right? But I'm fascinated. Jeff's laughing at me, by all these crazy cooking competitions like Chopped. You know, it gives these chefs come in and they give them 4 crazy ingredients in 20 minutes to make something. And I'm like, I can't even understand how they make something out of kiwi, bok choy, jelly beans, and bison or something. It's like ridiculous, but I'm fascinated. And so after years of falling asleep to Beat Bobby Flay and Chopped and Guy's Grocery Games, I've learned a few things. And here's what I've learned. What do you think is the most common, and it's every week, the most common critique made by judges after tasting people's meals? Not enough salt, not enough seasoning. Every time I'm like yelling at the TV going, people, just salt it. You know, it's like, how hard is this? I can't believe it. Like, they're professional chefs and they still don't use enough salt. Salt is a flavoring. It enhances the flavor of the food it seasons. We are called to enhance life in this world and influence the world for good. Where there's strife, we are to be peacemakers. Where there's sorrow, we are ministers. We are to bind wounds where there's hatred and mistrust and exemplify what God's love is, returning good for evil. And remember what it says in Colossians, let our conversation be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that we may know how to answer everyone. Our answers are to be kind and full of grace, but also salty, tasty, leaving people craving for more, craving for the love of God. But there's more to salt than just the taste buds. You know, salt has been used in many cultures as a valuable commodity. The word salary actually comes from the ancient word meaning salt money, referring to Roman soldiers' allowance for the purchase of salt Someone who earns his pay today is still to be said, "You're worth your salt, Paul. You're worth your salt." I'm looking at you. Salt has always been used to express promises and friendships between people too. It was even considered by the Greeks to be divine, and today, even in Arab cultures, if two men partake salt together, they are sworn to protect one another, even if they had previously been enemies. In some cultures, people, if you've seen it, they throw salt over their shoulder, and they do that when they're making a promise. And in the ancient world, eating salt was a way to make an agreement legally binding. If two parties entered the agreement, they would eat salt in the presence of witnesses, and that act would bind the contract. In 2 Chronicles, there's a king's speech in there that mentions the salt covenant. "Don't you know that the Lord, the God of Israel, has given the kingdom of Israel to David and his descendants forever by a covenant of salt?" Here, he refers to the strong, binding promise of God to give Israel to David and his sons forever. This idea of salt covenant carries a great deal of meaning because of the value of salt back then. Today, salt, we see it everywhere. It's on every restaurant table. There's a salt shaker. We have it sitting above our stove. It's everywhere. It didn't have the same, it had a much more tight meaning back then because it was so important to what they did for preservation too. They didn't have refrigeration, so it was an important commodity. So when Jesus told his disciples that they were the salt of the earth, he meant that the believers have value in this world and they have a preserving influence. They had value, we have value too. Salt and light, that's how we are to live. So one story in the Bible, I think, that shows us well, and now you can flip that other slide up that had, there we go, the Joseph slide on my, this is his performance review now. We're going to do his, okay? On one story of the Bible is Joseph, and so I'm going to recap the story for you. It's a very long story. I'm going to do it in 2 paragraphs. Let's see how I do. So if you remember, Joseph was the youngest of 12 brothers and is favored by his father. And being younger, he didn't pull the weight of the rest of the work in the family, yet he was given special treatment and even this beautiful coat by his father. So that puts him in the slacker category to start with. And his brothers were jealous of him and thought he wasn't working very hard. And then he had a couple of just incredible dreams and this ability to interpret the dreams. So he was smart and was given this knowledge. But I'm sure his brothers thought he was the know-it-all, right? And a jerk. And so, because in those dreams, he told his brothers, guess what? One day, you're going to bow to me. And that probably didn't go over well, right? And it didn't. They sold him to slavery in Egypt to this guy called Potiphar. And even while he was there as a slave in Egypt, he got thrown into prison because he was actually, he didn't do anything wrong, but he got thrown in there anyway, unjustly. But while he was there, he learned some things, right? He learned how to work hard, and even in prison, he started to interpret dreams. And his new position as a slave, he got noticed by the Pharaoh because of his ability to interpret the dreams and the knowledge that he had. And so he got pulled out, and he got to interpret these dreams, which actually saved all of Egypt from a terrible famine. And this made him a trusted advisor, and he became second in command of Pharaoh, his viceroy. And while he was in that position, Joseph missed his fathers and his brothers so much that he eventually brought them back to Egypt during a famine and tested their loyalty. Now with their new younger brother, Benjamin, and he forgave them all and broke down in tears and became that servant leader that God intended him to be. Thanks for the slide. So what does all this mean? What does it mean not to play it safe where salt and light are concerned? If we are capable in any moment of being salty and shining a bright light in the darkness, then we are charged to keep going despite the circumstances. And yes, it is important to recharge our battery and refill our salt shaker. And that's why we gather here in community, to encourage one another and to praise God and give thanks for the things that are excellent and praiseworthy. Playing life small and playing life safe does not serve the world. There's nothing that can be enlightened by shrinking in a dark corner or not speaking up just so others won't feel insecure or uncomfortable around us or won't think we're strange. That's just our fear talking. Fear makes a lot of excuses for us, doesn't it? We are all meant to shine, just like children do. We're born to make manifest the glory of God that's within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And as we're liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. We aren't here on earth in the kingdom of heaven to play it safe. We're here to shine and be very, very salty. So when we question ourselves, who am I to be salt and light? And when we start saying to ourselves, I just need to take care of myself, maintain work-life balance, or just deal with my own issues because I have so many, that's our fear talking. It's because salt and light is actually kind of scary and hard. Instead, let's ask ourselves a different question. Who are we not to be salt and light? We have value. We are worth our salt. We can enhance the world with flavor. We can shine brightly. It's how we go when we live. So friends, shine bright and be full of that preserving flavor and be Jesus in the world, to the world that desperately, desperately needs him. Amen.
Well, you heard Trish clearly that we are to glow in the dark. And so I'm going to invite you to stand and sing about it. Sometimes the world feels like a mess, full of drama, full of stress. But life puts a fist right in your ribs. Come on. You can hide if you choose to, and no one would even blame you. You can let them see how you deal with it. That even in the darkest place, His love can make you radiate. Doesn't matter how deep, how dark the night is. Keep hope and keep on shining. They'll see His light burning in your heart. Yeah. And if the road gets rough, just keep your head up. Let the world see what you're made of. His love's alive in your deepest heart. Yeah. Like a flame, like a burning star, you can shine right where you are. Made you to glow in the dark. Do. Well, don't be ashamed of your past. You can shine it like a piece of glass. Come on. The more broke you are, the more the light gets through. All right. Show your wounds and your flaws. Show them why you still need to cross. Let them see the work He's doing in you. That even in the darkest place, His love can make you radiate. It doesn't matter how deep, how dark the night is. Keep hope and keep on shining. They'll see His light burning in your heart, yeah. And if the road gets rough, just keep your head out. Let the world see what you made of. His love's alive in your deepest part. Yeah. Like a flame, like a burning star, you can shine right where you are. He made you to glow in the dark. Do-do-do. Do-do-do. That even in the darkest place, His love can make you radiate. It doesn't matter how deep, how dark the night is. Keep hoping, keep on shining. You'll see His light burning in your heart. Yeah. And if the road gets rough, just keep it there. But let the world see what you're made of. His love's alive in your deepest heart. Yeah. Like a flame, like a burning star, you can shine right where you are. He made you to glow in the dark. Do-do-do.
Thanks, Jim. So as we prepare for the Lord's table this morning, I ask you to join me in the words of this prayer of confession as we acknowledge our need for Jesus today. Gracious God, we're sorry you have become so caught up in ourselves and our own matters. We don't often think about why you made us who we are and placed us where we are. Yet we realize we're part of your kingdom. You created us and call us for purpose. As we come to this table now, forgive our self-centeredness and give us a wider vision, so that in you we may find our true selves and the reason for our being. We humbly ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen. So Jesus' work means that nothing stands between us and God, and communion is a physical reminder of his work. Here at Faith, all are welcome to the Lord's table for communion. It doesn't matter what your church background is or if you don't have one at all. If you believe in the love of Jesus and desire it in your life, you're invited to this table because the gifts of God are for all. Now I invite those of you who are at home to hold the elements as I hold them here, and then I invite you to say the words of this meal together. On the night Jesus showed his greatest love for us, he took a piece of bread, gave thanks for it, blessed it, and gave it to his disciples, as he gives it to us today, saying, "Take and eat, for this is my body, given for you. Whenever you eat of this bread, do it and remember me." Then, as we hold the cup, we continue. After supper, he took a cup of wine, gave thanks for it, and blessed it, and gave it to his disciples, as he gives it to us today, saying, "Take and drink, for this is the new promise in my blood, shed for you and all people, for the forgiveness of all your sins. Whenever you drink from this cup, do it and remember me." As we remember and as we prepare to come, I invite you to join me in the prayer that Jesus prayed. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. You may be seated. For our friends online, please share the elements with each other using the words such as the body of Christ given for you and the blood of Christ shed for you. And if you have someone with you who's not receiving the elements, we invite you to share words of blessing with them. Whatever words come to your heart, these are the right ones. Here in the sanctuary, we'll have two stations up front. You'll come up the center aisle, and the ushers will guide you. You get a little hand sanitizer, then come forward and receive the bread. And before you place the bread in your mouth, we invite you then to dip the bread in the wine, which is in a larger chalice, or grape juice in the smaller bowls if you prefer, and then take both elements together. And if you get and put the bread in your mouth, don't worry, we have more bread. We will also have gluten-free wafers and a bowl of juice just for the gluten-free wafers. If you need those, please let your server know. And for the younger ones, please have them come with their hands out, and that will let the server know that they received the elements. And if not, have them cross their arms over the chest so that they will know to receive a blessing. This is also the time when we take our offering. You can drop it in the basket here in the center as you come forward through the app. Look for the giving app, the giving tab at the bottom of the website. And we thank you in advance for your support of the mission and ministry of this community. So Jesus' invitation is here today for all. So come eat, drink, and be fed with the breath of life.
Oh, I have days I lose the fight, try my best, but just don't get it right. Where I talk and talk, but I don't want to miss the moments right before my eyes. Somebody with a hurt that I could have helped, somebody with a hand that I could have held, when I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Little time I have changed, I've been saved who I used to be. Somebody with a hurt that could have helped, somebody with a hand that could have helped, when I just can't see past myself. Lord, help me be a little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, a little more like Jesus, a little less like me. Oh, to be the beggar on the street, love to be your hands and feet, freely give what I receive. Lord, help me be. I wanna put you first above all else, love my neighbor as myself. In these moments no one sees, Lord, help me be. Yeah. A little more like mercy, a little more like grace, a little more like kindness, goodness, love, and faith, a little more like patience, a little more like peace, little more like Jesus, a little more like me, a little more like I'm living everything I preach. A little more like Jesus, a little less like me. We all need a little song, need a little light, need a hopeful word, shining bright. We can be a little song, be a little light. In this darkened world, we can shine, oh, shine so bright. Shine, oh, just like the starlight. Oh, shine. Shine, oh, shine a light. We all need a little soul, need a little light, need a hope shining bright. We can be a little soul, be a little light. In this darkened world, we can shine, oh, shine so bright. Shine, oh, just like the starlight. Shine, oh, shine. Shine, oh, shine a light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. We all need a little song, need a little light, need a hopeful word, shining bright. We can be a little song, be a little light in this darkened world. Shine, oh, shine so bright. Shine, oh, just like the starlight. Shine, oh, shine. Shine, oh, shine the light. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
This little light, one more time.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Yes.
May the body and blood of our Lord Jesus Christ strengthen you and keep you in God's grace. Amen. So we have a few announcements this morning. The first one is Love Does Day. Love Does Day is next Sunday. That's our annual day of service for the community from 9 to 1 in the morning. And they're projects for all ages, so families can serve together. On the app, under the Events tab, you will find Love Does Day. In fact, I looked, it's the only one there, so you can't miss it. And when you tap on it, you'll see the registration form. So you can fill that out even right now. You have permission not to pay attention. And then also the registration link went out in the e-news. And some of the projects are showcased in the lobby, so you can see what they are and sign up then as well. So what that means is we will not have worship next Sunday. as we're encouraging everyone to serve. If you show up here at 9:30 at Sunday, you'll get put to work. And then we will gather in the evening at 5 o'clock for a potluck supper, and then at 6 o'clock for worship. So it'll just be a great day here. So don't miss out on this just really amazing day. And then also, there are conversations around our focused vision. And so our focused vision, in addition to all the other things that we do as a body, is for families with preschool through 5th graders. And we want to hear from you. So the conversations will be happening in a variety of times and places between October 15 and November 6th. The information went out in the e-news this week, and you can find it, of course, on the app under the events or the e-news tabs. So please sign up and choose the date and time that work best for you. So at some of these gatherings, children are welcome, and at other gatherings, they're places that are more designed for adults. So you decide whether you want a night out or whether you want a place with your kids. And yes, one parent can go to one group and the other parent can go to the other one if that works well. What I don't see as an option is for you to drop off your kids at one place and then go disappear. So we'll be using this feedback that we receive to help us make decisions around caring for and supporting these families, both congregationally and also through the preschool. So I invite you to stand as you are able for the benediction. May the Lord walk beside you to comfort you, above you to watch over you, behind you to keep you safe, and before you to show you the way. Our worship here is ended, so our service in the world can begin. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.